Welcome back to The Different. I started writing this video with a simple premise. Blank page, at the top, I wrote William Saliba is the best centre-back in the Premier League. Honestly, do I believe that? Yeah, kind of on form, maybe. He's certainly close. I've decided to see if I can construct a rational argument to convince you and myself if he actually is. I genuinely didn't know what I'd think by the end when I started researching. I hadn't seen the numbers or thought about it enough. I do now, obviously. And it's brought up some fascinating stuff. So strap in as I, a biased Arsenal fan, try and justify my possibly wrong opinion. First off, why is William Saliba so good? Why does he deserve to be placed alongside Ruben Diaz, Van Dijk, Thiago Silva, insert your favourite Premier League centre-back here, and so on? Why are we even having this conversation? I asked my followers on X to tell me what they think is the one quality that makes William Saliba stand out above the rest. His single best attribute. Apart from a few jokes about his hairline and his partnership with Crocs, the main word that cropped up over and over again, as expected, was the word composure. As an experiment, in your mind right now, try and picture Saliba out of breath, or looking ruffled or overstretched. Anything other than focused and calm. Trawl through Google, look at hours of footage of him on the pitch, you simply will not find it. Saliba's calmness on and off the ball, at his age, is truly special. Of course, he's a physical phenomenon. 6'4" with a huge but mobile frame, and obviously a lot of the composure stems from that physical profile. If you know you can physically handle every striker in world football for both pace and size, you probably relax a little bit knowing that even if you did lose the ball, you can recover it. Take this situation here against Newcastle the other week. He actually makes the wrong call, arguably, trying to drive into space, but turns in his own box and still manages to find the pass under the pressure of 3 versus 1. But it's not just his body. The composure also stems from a mental profile that I've rarely seen in a player that young. It's one that reads the game and individual situations with such almost laughable ease, and when he manages to execute the perfect response so consistently, it makes it hard to believe he's still only 22. Take his 1v1 technique. He's hardly ever too early, hardly ever too late. Watch the timing on all of these. Time and time again, Saliba manages to execute an early tackle, a clearance, a block, a header, with the game IQ you only see in truly special players who feel the game more than others. The right body position, the right body orientation, it's all there. Sometimes the only way to appreciate what you do want is by looking at what you don't want. So apologies for this, but I'm going to show you Shkodran Mustafi. Mustafi 1v1, flying in early, clattering players, late throw the dice when the ball's already in the net. Saliba manages to draw alongside the player, go to ground, block, clear, poke or prod it away, all at the exact moment it's necessary, thanks to this ludicrous blend of physical power and pace and mental concentration and calm. If defensive anticipation is Declan Rice's superpower, this is Saliba's, as Erling Haaland found out at the Emirates. Over his shoulder, going backwards, I don't think there's many better players in the world in terms of dealing with runners, slip balls, balls over the top, you name it. Saliba's ability to deal with balls in behind means Arsenal's entire defensive line can squeeze up, and the impact of that on the team is arguably more important than almost anything else that Saliba does. The single time I remember him being done over his shoulder, running backwards, was Ollie Watkins away at Villa Park last season, who is an expert at that wide finish. I mean, seriously good. If you can tell me another time he got done 1v1, hats off to you, I don't remember it. When you can deal with Mbappe like this when you're barely past a teenager, I think it tells you the type of defender he is over his shoulder. But not only is Saliba a really, really special defender, he's also the bedrock of our build-up. He often has the most touches a game in our team, and his pass selection, detail, and tempo of the pass is quite simply masterful. His courage and ability to keep playing the same way that Mikel asks him to is one of the reasons I think he's so loved at the Emirates. Take the opening few minutes against Burnley. Saliba's job here is to bait Jay Rodriguez to jump onto us. Time and time again, he takes the risk that Rodriguez will nick it off him in order to try and create that space in behind centrally. Rodriguez jumps over and over, Saliba tries it left and right, and then it works. He's never tempted to slog it downfield for no reason. He's willing to take the risk over and over again until we get what we need and we're out. Go and watch it for yourself. It's just the first couple of minutes and see how many times other people find him. He is the centrifugal hub, the starting point, the lighthouse of Arsenal's build-up. If I was forced to ask for more, I think there's still a few question marks about him judging the flight of the ball, specifically from wide, and occasionally I do want him to be a bit more brave and switch the ball a bit more, but that latter one may be instruction. It doesn't feel like a capacity issue. I also wonder whether he takes a little bit too long to get the ball out of his feet at times. Just a few too many touches. I mean, I'm nitpicking, and let's be clear, he does not give a what I think. But actually, my main excitement is that I don't think we've seen the dominance that Saliba could show. I think he has more to show us in terms of driving forward with the ball, and I wouldn't be surprised if Saliba roaming into midfield in a kind of John Stones-esque way to a lesser extent was something we saw down the line in a future evolution of Arsenal. Among other things, this is a potentially special ball carrier that we haven't seen yet. You can make a fairly cogent case that Saliba is Arsenal's most important player. I'm not sure I'd say that, but I couldn't disagree with you particularly strongly. I'm pretty sure last season, if he stays fit, we win the title. This is a £200 million defender, and he's just getting started. But forget all the fancy stuff. Just look at him, for goodness sake. I'm getting a 4-letter word that rhymes with Dora. We joke about that, but it does matter. So he's pretty good. That's clear. But is he the best centre-back in the Premier League? Again, asking my followers on X, 4 names stood out in the replies to the question of who is the best centre-back in the Premier League. Of course, my followers will skew to Arsenal, but the names were Saliba, Thiago Silva, Van Dijk, and Ruben Dias. If you're Portuguese, I'm so sorry. Comparing players across any team is extremely hard to get right. Subtly, Saliba's role, even though he's a centre-back, will differ from whoever you compare him with. He may be asked to have more or less touches, receive in different positions, defend different channels, so on and so on. And of course, the team affects it too, which we'll come to. But let's look at the data and try and pick through it. This is from Data MB. Here we're using its centre-back comparison tool, which looks at the players' Premier League numbers for completed passes, forward passes, progressive passes, defensive actions, defensive duel percentage, aerial percentage, progressive carries, and minutes played. I think it's a good tool to compare a modern centre-back overall, but has limitations. Saliba is in blue, and if you pick him out, you can see his duel percentage is top, his passing numbers are generally on par with the others, his carrying numbers are average, and his aerial numbers are low. So let's deal with the aerial thing. Arsenal and City simply face less crosses than Chelsea and Liverpool. Chelsea have faced 125 so far this season, with Liverpool at 146. City have faced 83 crosses right at the bottom, and we're closely behind with 87. This will skew the aerial numbers in the same way if you face more shots as a goalkeeper, your save percentage normally goes up. The extent to which that's an indication of quality is a much harder question. If you face more crosses, do you get more prepared for it? Do you have more opportunity to get those numbers up? Do teams try and target it differently? But I would say I think Van Dijk is better in the air than all 4 of the players I mentioned. Arteta actually said recently that heading is something they're working on with Saliba. On his goal at Burnley, he said, "Saliba is a real presence, but he hasn't showed that skill consistently, and we're really working with him because he can be much more dominant, and the goal today is a real example of that." Looking a bit deeper into the aerial numbers across the 4, you can see here that it's certainly something Saliba can work on. And I'd argue that in a functioning centre-back pairing, you need a complement. Gabriel is definitely the aerial presence in Arsenal's defence, so maybe Saliba doesn't have to be. And Saliba's better than Diaz in the air anyway. So having dealt with his clear weakness, let's talk style. Diaz is a ball carrier, the kind of apotheosis of the modern centre-back who could basically be a midfielder. I don't think Saliba is that. I think he's the more dominant defender who will always be just that, a defender. A bit taller, a bit meaner, but prefers the shorter give and go, the give it to the midfield and get back into position type. In terms of Thiago Silva, there's a calm head there that knows where to stand when, but he simply hasn't got the athletic capacity that Saliba has, and his passing numbers, particularly in terms of progressing and carrying, aren't anything that can make up for the fact that a young winger could probably get the run on him. Coming towards the end of his career, though he's probably what Chelsea need right now, just ask yourself who you'd rather have in a 1v1 against Haaland or Mbappe. Saliba's imperious nature reminds me of an earlier version of Van Dijk, with a similar impact on the team from a different angle. There's the calm, the aura, the rising tide that lifts all boats. But while Virgil was a bit more all-action, because that's what that Liverpool team required him to be, Saliba's dominance in the duels, but preference to defer his play so often, makes him different. Virgil will be the main man and beat you over 12 rounds. Saliba will evade you, but land a knockout in the 4th. The Van Dijk we're seeing this season has certainly captured attention, but it's more of a return than an emergence. So, how do we actually define it? For me, Thiago Silva isn't in the conversation, so how can we decide between Ruben Dias, Van Dijk, and Saliba? Basically, am I getting off the fence? Well, I will answer it, but it does depend what you want from your centre-back. If you want an aerially dominant leader, pick Virgil. If you want a passing and carrying machine from deep, choose Diaz. If you want a 1v1 specialist who can dictate, pick Saliba. To argue who's the best individual is very hard because it's not directly comparable. So, I think you have to look at the system as a whole. Is this individual contributing to a functioning system? Arsenal currently sit equal first with Liverpool for goals conceded. Forgetting individual role for a second, that's got to be the job of the defence. Keep the ball out of the net. City have conceded more than Arsenal and Liverpool. Look a bit deeper though, and Arsenal have the best non-penalty XG against in the entire league at 8.5. City are at 10.3, and Liverpool are up at 14.5. Systemically, Saliba is in the best team right now. After 12 games, that's a fact. Is that all reflected glory onto him? No. Is that massively down to the blend of the defenders, the tactics, the manager, so on and so on? Of course. But can you argue you're the best centre-back in the Premier League if your team are putting up mid-table XG against numbers? Maybe, but it's hard. In the end, a lot of football comes down to how you feel. I can throw numbers at you, make arguments, you can agree, disagree, but the eye test isn't to be sniffed at. When I watch Saliba, I just do think he's the best in the league. But I know that comes from what I like as a centre-back. And in the end, it's subjective. Some people want their centre-backs to be gliders, to be the low-socked passing accuracy merchants. Others want them to be last-ditch roaring leaders. But I want my centre-back to be a no-nonsense, immovable force. I want you lining up in the tunnel thinking, I can't get this guy.
We can't beat this guy!
Thinking back to the Invincibles, I do think Saliba would have fit right in. Football's different now, but I think if you look across at him in 03-04, I think he'd have you beat in the tunnel. Saliba has something to prove. I'm a biased fan, probably, but Virgil's presence now feels fallible. Look at the game against Newcastle, and something about Diaz feels lightweight. It's completely unscientific, it's just what I think. For me, William Saliba, for what I want from a centre-back, is the best in the league. If I wanted something a bit more on the ball, I'd probably go for Diaz, and if I wanted a bit more presence and experience, I'd probably go Virgil. For me, overall, it's Saliba, and now, it's up to you. If you like The Different Knock and want to see more, you can access our bonus content on Patreon and YouTube memberships for just £3 a month.